welcome to the meeting of the Fire Authority. First item on the agenda is apologies for absence, please. Chris.
Councillors Watkins, Buckley and Proctor and ACFO Prendergast.
Please, thank you ever so much, Chris. Number 2, declarations of interest. Members of the Fire and Rescue Authority are reminded that they have the personal responsibility to declare both orally and in writing any personal or prejudicial interest in respect of matters contained in this agenda in accordance with the provisions of the Local Government Act 2000 and the Fire and Rescue Standing Orders and the Members' Code of Conduct. Thank you, members. Any declarations of members?
No.
Steve?
Yeah, just New Wayne is mentioned as usual. Ongoing. Yeah.
I didn't hear you, Steve. What did you say?
New Wayne.
Thank you very much, Steve. Thanks. Thank you. Next on the agenda is the Chairman's announcements. Some sad news. I would like to express my and our condolences to the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service and the family following the death of firefighter Barry Martin. Barry was one of the 5 firefighters taken to hospital following an incident on Princes Street in Edinburgh on the 23rd of January. At 10:50 a.m, we will be pausing this meeting to join colleagues across the United Kingdom. We will be observing a minute's silence at 11 a.m. to mark our respect. Those of us in HQ will be asked to join all staff gathering at the Memorial Stone in reflection. The meeting will convene roughly about 11:10. Some more sad news. Former Deputy Chair of the Fire Authority, former Councillor Keith Hyde from Cardiff Council. I would like to express my sympathies to the family of Keith, who was a member of this authority from 2004 to 2017. I had a lot of respect for Keith Hyde. He was a really good ambassador for the Fire Authority and, like myself, puts his heart for the Fire Authority. So my condolences to everybody and to the members of Cardiff City Council who actually knew Keith Hyde. So good news. Councillor Evan Roberts, on behalf of the authority, I'd like to congratulate you on being awarded the British Empire Medal in the King's New Year's Honours List. Congratulations, well deserved. I see you, I've known you for many years, and you are a really good advocate for Gilver Cope, the ward that you represent, and truly deserved. I was so proud to hear that you got that award. Congratulations.
Thank you. I know you're jealous, but they were.
Following the FPU ballot over nationwide pay dispute, 88% of those who voted were in favour of taking industrial action. Further negotiations took place on the 8th of February, when an approved offer was made, resulting in the FPU postponing industrial action, while the ballot members of the latest offer, a further update will be provided as part of the agenda's meeting today. 3 operational members of the service have been deployed to Turkey to assist in the international search and rescue heavy team following the devastation of the earthquake. As you all agree, it is absolutely horrendous what it looks out there. I would like to extend our thanks for their commitment and support in the rescues, and I ask Gary Davis to provide us a brief update to the meeting during the meeting, if it's okay, Gary, later on. Yeah, thank you ever so much. It regrettably reported that the crew from Merthyr Station attended a fire fatality on the 22nd of January 2023. Our thoughts are with the family and the loved one of the individuals. I would like to express our thanks to the crews for the violent efforts in this incident, and I'm going to show you Dewey Rose will also give an update on this. Last month, the Chief and I attended the first Fire and Rescue Social Partnership established by the Deputy Minister with colleagues from Mid and West Wales and North Wales, along with Welsh Government, Fire and Rescue and trade union officials. It was a very busy, full agenda with very productive decisions on a vast array of areas. And I believe we've got another one in the diary for the next 3 months, which we're going to have another one here. Yeah. So I'm glad that these social partnership meetings are taking place with Welsh governments and unions, because I think it's a way forward for everybody. That's it. Thank you, members. So we're going right to number 4 to receive the minutes on page 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Is everybody happy with those minutes of that meeting?
Move that, Chairman.
Yes, Chair.
Second, Chair.
Thank you ever so much. Standards Committee on Monday, the October 2022, page 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. Okay,
Second.
happy? Yep, thank you. 21, Local Pension Board. And 21, 22, 23, 24, 25.
I'll move those, Chair.
Everybody happy with those? Yep. On page 27, minutes of the scrutiny meeting on 28th of November. So 27, 28, and 29, and 30. Everybody happy with those minutes?
Yeah, so moved.
Yeah.
I second.
Okay, thank you ever so much. Yeah, there we are. So we're going to page 31, updates. You're in, yeah? Alison, yeah.
Yep, thank you, Chair. Morning, members. To update on the first two actions, so this is in relation to correcting age discrimination in fire pensions. We have continued to provide those in scope as described as category 1 cases. So those are people who are currently employed by the service but who are looking to retire with retirement estimates. We have processed up until the end of March, or we will have processed, because our firefighters give us 3 months notice, 39 cases of category 1. The category 2 cases are those who are already retired, and we've made a decision as yet to process those. The advice is to hold those until the legislation is in place. Just to update as well, we've been working on our communications with staff. We've purchased the GAD modeller, so that's the Government Actuaries Department's pension modeller, which allows us to put their details in and receive an estimate correcting their pension through Remedy. And we've undertaken some user testing on that modeller, made a few tweaks. And we're now working with ICT colleagues to put the modeller onto our website so that staff can access it. So it's another tool for people to understand the impact of correcting age discrimination on their pension. So that's the first two actions. The third one, which is in relation to the Living Wage Foundation, just to confirm that we are paying above the Real Living Wage Foundation's rate of £10.90 an hour. And the ongoing activity on this one is around working with our contractors, which is working with our procurement teams to hopefully engage them to pay the Real Living Wage Foundation, if not now, at some point in the future.
Okay, thank you, Alison. Any questions for anybody? Yes, Sue,
Can I just ask, to engage with those people that we contract? What sort of engagement is that? Is that mutual or?
So the engagement is happening in Geraint's team. So what I will do is just explain that the idea is that we work with them to understand their position, so that we can hopefully in the longer term encourage and work through a contractual basis for them to be in the right place, if that makes sense. But Geraint's team are actually doing the hard work on this.
Yeah. Sorry, I was, my computer's crashed on me. That's why. Sorry, can you just cover off the bit of the engagement there?
Yeah. So this is with the Real Living Wage Foundation, the first stage.
Sorry, I don't know from there. Yeah. Obviously, with all our suppliers, there's an impact as part of the Real Living Wage and the impact that what they pay, the suppliers that we engage with or that we use, that the payments that they make to their employees impacts on our accreditation as part of that process. So we were working with our suppliers to ensure that they are either at that level or have got a commitment to bring their staff up to that level. We have had some of our contracts, obviously, where they have had to raise the level up to the living wage. It has come at a cost to the authority, so it has increased the cost of some of the contracts that we've got in place. But, it's something that we're looking at right across the board with all of our contracts.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, thank you ever so much. So we go on page 37, item 6.1, independent cultural review. Gerrit?
Thank you, Chair. I'll take you through the report briefly and briefly through the terms of reference that are set out within the report, and then obviously throw it open for questions and invite the Chief Officer to come in for comment as well. Obviously, the purpose of the report is to set up the process now for appointing an independent chairperson and the terms of reference for the independent cultural review, and looking at the timescales and the potential impacts for the service. You'll all be aware from previous meeting, following the ITV news coverage, where there was cases highlighted of historical sexual harassment and inappropriate behaviour. At that point, in the Chief's response to ITN, he committed to commissioning an independent review, looking at the service's culture, disciplinary processes, and historical disciplinary cases. Obviously, the review is going to be an organisational-wide review, and it will be a fully independent review. But we intend that the review obviously will look not just at cases of bad behaviour and bad examples, but it will also look at areas of strength and areas of good practice, and identify those areas where we can build on those strengths, and also look for areas of improvement as well as part of the review. So just want to stress that point that we are looking and do recognise that there are good behaviours and good practice right across the service. As well as looking at the cultural side of things, it will be rigorously looking at all of our disciplinary policies, the procedures that we have in place, and like we say, looking at those historic cases, looking back over the last 5 years, with a view to the independent chairperson commenting on how those cases were conducted. Obviously, the next course of action, following all that's gone on to date, is the actual appointment of that independent chairperson. And we've been working closely with Blake Morgan solicitors, who are our legal advisors, who initially drew up a long list of King's councillors to look at who we could potentially appoint as that independent chair. So we give a commitment right at the start. It would be someone of an extreme high calibre, a KC, with the right experience, knowledge, and awareness of our sector, that they can undertake this type of review. As part of the terms of reference, which are set out in Appendix 1, we detail an appointment panel. So the appointment panel is consisting of the Steve Braddock, the chair of the Fire Authority, the Chief Fire Officer, Ujekwe, and then we've had 3 independent people who've come forward and volunteered to assist us in appointing the independent chair. And they are Rachel Williams, who's the founder of the charity Stand Up to Domestic Abuse, Aliyah Mohammed, who's Chief Exec of Race Equality First, and Councillor Liz Burnett, who's the leader of the Vale of Glamorgan Council. And that panel is supported then by Paula Catherines, who's a senior partner at Blake Morgan Solicitors. So like I said, the draft terms of reference are attached to Appendix 1, and I'll take you through those briefly. As part of the process of getting to the sort of conclusion of the terms of reference, we have done a consultation process. So we've consulted with relevant stakeholders, all senior leaders within the organisation, the rep bodies, FBU, Unison, GMB and the like, and wider where possible to ensure that those terms of reference are fit for purpose and developed in sort of engagement with those and taking on board some comments. We have had responses back to as part of that consultation process. Heads of service from the organisation fed into it. The FBU have given us a response and raised some concerns, and Unison give their response in writing as well. We've also received a letter at the end of last week from the Deputy Minister raising concerns similar to the FBU around the involvement of the Chair and the Chief Fire Officer as part of the appointment panel, and as part of, depending on the agreement of members today to approve the terms of reference, we'll obviously be responding to their concerns. But I think it's wholly right and proper that the Chief and the Chair, as part of the governance for this authority and the service, are part and advisors to that panel. Should there be any questions or queries raised by the potential candidates, it's unlikely that those independent members of the panel will be able to answer sufficiently, and that would put undue extension onto the process. So I think it's right and proper that the Chair and the Chief are part of the process. There'll be ongoing engagement with our staff throughout this process. So I think the internal and external communications that we do are key, and they will be integral to the entire process to make sure that we get staff to buy in to the whole ethos and to partake in the process. And obviously to support that commitment, we need staff to buy into it. So we've given a commitment that anyone that wants to take part in the process will be able to, but we've also given assurances that it's not an absolute commitment. People don't have to take part if they don't feel right and proper. So it is an individual choice. But the more they take part, the better outcomes that we will get. Unfortunately, obviously, this is coming at a cost to the service, the entire review, and the costs are set out in paragraph 3.34, or the estimated costs, sorry, set out in that paragraph of the review, and we're looking at approximately £340,000 to undertake this review. To undertake the review, obviously, this wasn't identified in any part of our budget setting process, either for the current financial year or for next financial year. So therefore, to undertake it in its fullest, we will need to draw on existing earmarked reserves, which are allocated to set aside for this review. I'll briefly go on to the terms of reference before coming back to the recommendations. So the terms of reference in Appendix 1 is set out as an information pack. So obviously it'll give a clearer picture of the service, the authority to those interested parties. It sort of sets the tone for the authority. It sets out the size, structure, geography, shows our vision, mission and values, our strategic planning frameworks. It just gives a clearer picture of where we are and the type of construct of the service in terms of the people and the mix of employees that we have across the service. So the demographic data is also given. And then we come to the actual terms of reference itself. Well, the terms of reference obviously is draft, as I say, but it sets out in terms of timescales that we commence this process as soon as possible. The shortlisting for the process has taken place last Tuesday, and the appointment panel will meet again next Friday to review and meet with the shortlisted candidates, who will obviously be the opportunity to question those candidates and for them to sort of make a pitch on why they feel it appropriate that they have the right credentials to undertake the review. The expectation is that the review will sort of run its course throughout the remainder of the calendar year and conclude either at the end of this year, but certainly early part of next financial year. So the overall objectives set out within a review are to review existing policies, procedures, systems relating to bullying and harassment, grievances, whistleblowing concerns, dignity at work complaints, and any other processes for raising complaints. Having access to all of our policies and procedures relating to discipline of staff. Looking at historical discipline cases over the last 5 years. Considering the impact of the values, behaviours and professional standards and decisions at leaders of all levels within the service. Consider the impact of individuals or groups' behaviour and of professional standards of staff and how this influences culture within the service. Obviously considering the treatment of staff with dignity and respect. Looking for areas of strength and areas of good example, as I've already said. And identifying other areas of best practice where possible. Obviously, to undertake the review, the methodology which is set out then is that it'll be desktop type reviews, looking at all of our policies, procedures, relevant documentation, and giving full access to that. There'll be a process for the independent chair and their team to interview current and former staff from across the service, and obviously for them to be able to share their views and perspectives. There'll also be the opportunity to do online staff surveys and other methods of communication will be put in to ensure that there's full access given to everyone that the independent chair needs. The review may also engage with other stakeholders, so the representative bodies and other external partners. And obviously the likelihood is that it'll include visits to stations, the departments across the service, giving access and availability for staff to talk to the independent chair and their team. There will be resourcing requirements as well from within the service to support that process. And obviously that's built in as part of the costs that I discussed earlier. And then at the end of it all, obviously when we get to the conclusion of the process, it's for the independent chair then to present the report back initially to that independent appointment panel prior to any final publication, which will obviously be agreed in terms of media release and media statements which will go with it. Also, as part of the terms of reference, and which I won't cover off in detail, but it's there for members to read, is the confidentiality, privacy and privilege parts of the terms of reference. So if I come back to the recommendations we've set out in the report. So it's firstly for the members to approve the creation of that independent appointment board, set on in paragraph 2.3. Members approve the draft terms of reference for the independent review, attached to Appendix 1. Members approve the allocation of earmarked reserves, outlined in paragraph 3.3.4. And that we received nominations from members, 3 nominations we said, to partake in an authority review board, which will act as a conduit then should the independent chair need assistance or just need engagement with the authority and senior members, just to ensure that we facilitate the process in the right way as an ongoing part of the review. It may be that board isn't actually needed, but I think it's right and proper that we set it up just so that the independent chair has access to senior members and senior officers should they need to sort of break down some barriers and get access to the right people and processes. So I'll pause at that point. Chair, I don't know if you want to bring in Chief.
Chief, do you want to come in?
Thanks, Chair. Morning, members. Thanks, Geraint. Yeah, I think firstly, thanks to the 3 independent members that have committed to help us select an independent chair. So thanks to Rachel, Alia and Councillor Liz Burnett as well. Their input, their knowledge and experience when we went through the shortlisting process was exemplary in all fairness. So we've got to a shortlist of 6 appropriate barristers and KCs. Thanks to Paula, Catherine's also from Blake Morgan that done a phone around chambers for eminent and qualified barristers to help us on that as well. The shortlisting discussion is scheduled for Friday, but as Geraint has said, the Welsh Government have echoed the Fire Brigade Union's concerns that myself as the chief or the chair has any involvement with those discussions on Friday, which we will obviously take members' views today, but catch up after this meeting as the chief and chair on how we take that forward and the correspondence that we need to put back to the minister. But our stance has always been to have a truly independent review, which is why we set up an independent selection panel, because we've always looked at it through the lens of when the recommendations are published, is that everyone can stack up behind those recommendations, whether they be good, bad or indifferent, that we can all stack up behind them because it's been done truly independent, right from the selection of the chair, right through to the cultural review of our processes and discipline cases as well. So we'll take those conversations forward and we'll engage with the Deputy Minister in correspondence after. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah. I'll go hands up first and I'll come around the table. I'll do it either other. Right, I got Mick Dad.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I've just got a couple of questions here. Can I just go back to the paragraph 3 first of all, which is about the implications? I mean, maybe I don't understand the purpose of that paragraph, but when we say the impact on quality, diversity and inclusion being zero, being no, is that a you know, a true sort of thing to say? Because I mean, this is all about, you know, equality, isn't it? And about sort of healthy relationships and all that.
Yeah, that's just obviously the assessment of this report, the equality, diversity, inclusion impacts on this particular report. Like I said, there will be equality impacts coming out of the actual review, but not directly as a result of this report. So that's more from the review itself.
Yeah, I know. I mean, like in local government, you know, it gets to be sort of just ticking boxes. But I think this is, I mean, the whole point here, isn't it, of this review is to find that really, or find out that, you know, we have got sort of a healthy working environment where, you know, equality and respect are guaranteed. So I would have thought, you know, that would be quite an important thing to say there. Can I go back to the paragraph 2 about the costs, Chair, if I may? I have no sort of feeling about, you know, what these days, what independent sort of people charge or something, but £80 for the, sorry, 80,000 for the sort of independent advisor or chair. Is that sort of something that that looks sort of reasonable to most members? You know, they will be working quite hard, I take it, you know, it's over time. So at the same time, when do we actually look to receiving their report to yourself first, you know, to this panel first, and then to us generally? Are we talking about several months' work in there?
Yeah, Councillor, as I said, the expectation is that the review will run for the remainder of the year, probably till December this year, if not into the early part of next year. So timescales wise, you know, it is a long and thorough review, and you know, to appoint the King's Council, they don't come cheap. You know, they are an expensive commodity, but you know, to do this in its fullest and with the right knowledge, experience to undertake the review, you know, it's only proper that we appoint someone of that nature.
Yeah, I mean, you know, as I said, really, I sort of defer to your experience on all this, but it struck me as being a lot of money there. But if that is the rate, then that is what we have to pay, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Martin?
Well, thank you, Chair. Just picking up on the objections that have been received about the appointment of yourself and the chief. Could we, you know, this is something obviously new to us. Other reviews have happened throughout the UK broadly similar. What has been the approach on those reviews about involving the heads, chair and the chief?
Yeah, I think it varies in different places, to be honest with you. I think different organisations have done different things. Some have unilaterally just appointed a lead and a chair for their reviews. Others have engaged in a similar type of process that we have as well, which is where we took some of our learning from. Back to that point of can we all stack up as stakeholders behind the recommendations, and no one then points to it lacks validity because of who was appointed, which is why we went down the road of the independent members on the selection panel, with myself and the chair then sitting there to provide overview and context around the service and to answer any queries and questions that might come from it. Obviously, that optic and what that now looks like has been called into question.
And that was the biggest shock when I had that letter at 4 o'clock on Friday afternoon. It's no correspondence from government beforehand, and I just don't know.
Right.
There we are. I'll leave it at that.
But the issue is that we're starting using best practice, and it's a practice that has been replicated elsewhere. So it's not, something that hasn't happened in other similar situations.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah. And this is a service-led review. It's something the chief is committed to undertaking. So, as monitoring officer, I think it's right and proper that we maintain our governance on the process. Yes, we want to ensure that it's totally transparent and ensure that it is totally independent, but we have to remain have our governance on the process. But to be able to support those independent members who just wouldn't be able to answer service or authority specific questions.
Could I just come in?
Yes, yeah.
I think we're trying to strike the balance of the independence, but retaining that responsibility and ownership from what ITV horrifically revealed to us, having that leadership role for the authority and the service moving through the difficult period that we are. So it wasn't trying to strike that balance of trying to absolve all responsibility to others to retain that, and I think that's what we need to do is, to make sure we've got the trust of stakeholders that's what the independent process will deliver. So obviously we've got a bit of work to do. I think that we've been put a couple of stakeholder briefings out. The last one probably went out about 2 and a bit weeks ago, and we didn't have any comments or observations as a result of that coming back until the chair had correspondence late on Friday afternoon, really. So.
Where they've been till now. I've met with the deputy minister on numerous occasions, and nothing has been brought up to me, and it's come to the blue. So there we are. Dan.
Thank you, Chair. So firstly, sorry, my two main concerns are, firstly, obviously, I do understand we have a time limit review. So obviously, I do understand looking at a time limit, but 5 years to me seems it might not be long enough back in the past. You obviously have people still working in the service who might have potentially done behaviours which we would see now as unacceptable 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago, and they may still be working in the service, and potentially obviously in quite high levels. So I wondered, is there any way to look potentially obviously fulfill lifetimes of obviously for current staff? So if anything does come up which needs to be reviewed past a 5-year date, is not a firm cut off. Obviously we want to leave most of the cultural thing to the 5 years, but is there any leeway in the investigations that obviously go further than that if necessary? My only other issue is that I do really support steps taken in place, and I think the independent panel will be independent, and it is a good idea. As obviously already mentioned on the optics, has another option been looked at, potentially having a former chief fire officer from a retired officer from another fire and rescue service somewhere in the UK, who obviously doesn't have the in-depth experience of our service, but does have operational experience and has similar experience and could ask obviously similar questions to our chief? Has that option been looked at also?
Yeah.
Did one of the things.
Thanks. It was striking on your last question, it was striking that balance of ownership and responsibility, and not absolving that to anyone else really. And then on your 5-year time frame, that 5-year time frame wasn't bound for people to share their experiences with the culture review. The 5-year time frame was put on to review historic discipline cases, those cases that had previously been heard. So it's not the case that we wouldn't listen to people that may have had good, bad, or indifferent experiences and want to share those with the review panel on a culture perspective. It was only time bound from a review of discipline cases. So the review team could take a look at each and every case to see if there was a balance of whether or not appropriate judgment was being made through the different discipline panels that have existed in that time frame. Happy to relook at that if
Yes, yeah, very much so.
Come in, Chair. The one thing I forgot to mention when I was covering the report is obviously because the terms of reference is still in draft. The expectation is that whoever is appointed as independent chair may want to shape the terms of references slightly different. So they may want to either add to them, tweak them, just review them and put their own stamp on them. So that's why we say there's still a draft terms of reference, because the expectation is that the appointed chair will put their own stamp on those terms of reference.
Hey, Dan? Yeah.
John.
Paula?
I was just going to say that, as the employer of this person that's going to be doing the review, because, it is coming out of South Wales Fire and Rescue Committee money, not committee money, but, it's only right that you should be on this panel. You are employing this person to do this job. So, I can't see what the objection would be.
John?
Are you referring to me, Chair?
Yes, John, yes, yeah.
Yeah, but I'm
Jen, sorry, my fault.
That's all right.
Sorry.
I thought I'd changed my name then.
No, my fault. I wholeheartedly apologise.
No, that's fine, Steve. That's all right. What my question was about you both being on it in an advisory capacity. That's been answered. I agree with both of you being on there in an advisory capacity. Having done various investigations myself, we have to be careful that that's not misconstrued. And I think we have to make it clear in writing to all and sundry who's taking part that is your role. Because you know what it's like out there. They'll make stories up if they can't find the truth, particularly the media.
Yes, yeah.
That's my
Sorry, John.
My opinion. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
Done finished now.
Yeah.
Thanks, Chair. Luckily as a colleague before me on several of my questions. But in terms of then backing up questions arising from that, so with regards to the appointment board and the issue of yourself that you've been on it, how will the appointment board come to their decision on appointing the chairperson? So will you or Hugh have a vote on that board? I think that information, if you're shaking your head that you won't, you are there just to answer questions from the operational and point of view, and it will be the independent people who choose the chair. You did make that clear in the report, which is probably where the concerns have come from. So thank you for that. And then on the time frame issue raised by Dan as well, still got a bit of concern in terms of the disciplinary, if it's just restricted to disciplinary and not then the wider issue of culture and complaints thing. How many, do we have the numbers? How many disciplinary cases have there been in the past 5 years? Because I'm just aware that the past 5 years does include obviously 2.5 years of that, in effect, of the very unusual and different circumstances of COVID, which changed everything, and therefore limiting it to 5 years because you're including the COVID period in it, where obviously perhaps things were going on in your offices and things where everyone started working from home, etc. So therefore, you know, I know myself as a union rep, you know, all of a sudden complaints about, for example, bullying and bad behaviour by managers in offices disappeared in COVID because everyone was working from home.
Yeah.
They couldn't be bullied for that period. Therefore, that's my concern with the time limit. Half of it includes a time that was completely separate, completely different. Everyone's world turned upside down. So there could be issues as well, obviously, that arose out of it being in COVID as well, that weren't related to normal procedures. So that's why it would probably be a good idea to expand the time period to make sure that it's not skewed in any way by half of it being COVID. So I just point that in. And then further on, then in with views with regards to what we've been asked to support, which is the appoint the review working group. And for that, could I highly recommend that, because it's a 3-member group, and given the issues, especially we're looking at, that you know, I know we can all trust each other as members to be pro, but I would recommend that we make it a majority female group, so at least 2 of the members are women, and not just making the case for myself, perhaps putting myself forward, but we look at perhaps people who have experience in the private sector and not just public sector working, because there's one thing I've noted in just the 7 years of my own experience of the public sector, having worked my entire career in the private sector, they're very different things. And the viewpoint from the private sector as well as the public, people experiencing the public sector, it would be a good idea for that to come together rather than it being all people whose careers has been in the public sector. Because again, it's just new ways of looking at things, being used to different procedures and different processes can shine. Because what we want to do with this review is shine as much light as possible into as many nooks and crannies as there are, and to make sure that, yeah, at the end of it, whatever comes out of the review, we'll have we'll have the truth, you know, and we'll know then where we are going forwards to make sure, yeah, that the last thing we want is ITV digging around and finding something else in 6 months' time and banjaxing us all on the doorstep. So that's what I would recommend as well. Thank you very much.
I can't guarantee the latter. To be honest with you, on the COVID period, yeah, more than happy to look at the 5-year period and extend that if need to. The one thing I would say is that 95%, if not more, of staff were in their workplace throughout the COVID period. As an organisation, all our operational crews need to be on fire stations. Our control staff need to be in joint fire control. Our fleet technicians need to be in the workshops, and our IT technicians need to be. Whilst we had a bit of flexibility for our corporate staff, that is a very, very, very small member of our staff. But happy to look at that 5-year period, and it was there as a suggestion and a benchmark. But we're more than happy to extend that. I'm looking at Al. I don't want to put you on the spot, Al, but do you have an indication or some thoughts around that? How many cases they are in that 5-year period?
So we've dug into the archive and we've got we started to pull together a spreadsheet of all the cases. There are quite a few cases, so we're now pulling the data together so it's in an easy readable format. It's in different spreadsheets, so we just need to pull it all together. Now, my understanding was that there was nearly 100 lines, because this is in an Excel spreadsheet, and we need to just kind of clear it up and make it look presentable for the legal team in Blake Morgan. So yeah.
Yeah, I suppose because you haven't looked at it before, no. You wouldn't know, for example, if this 5 years, 5 years from now going back, is it representative of the previous 5 years? That's why it's just because something so major happened. And I appreciate, yeah, obviously, yeah, your operational, the fire crews have to be where they are, but even then there were probably changes you made, weren't there, for COVID to be as COVID safe as you possibly could be within, obviously remaining operationally capable. So there's the world changed, and it, even though obviously you carried on providing the fabulous service, things would have, I suspect would have changed, wouldn't they? That.
So taking on board comments, so we can amend the terms of reference to say that it looks at over at least the last 5 years.
As Geraint said as well, they are only there as a draft. So the chair of the review may wish to extend that period, may wish to, might turn around and say it's too long, too short. So we'd be guided by that. It was a pack put together as a guide. We looked at the ITV article, the questions that were level to us to answer. That's why they found into the draft of the reference list there as a bit of an the candidates as well. But they need to shape what that looks like as the chair for that independent review as well.
I think with the the whole thing, the people who spoke to ITV are obviously, they're a certain sort of person. We know that there's going to be others who haven't so far felt confident, etc., to come forward, and thereby making things as broad, etc., as possible. We want to find those, because what we saw on ITV was bad, obviously, but we were supposed to triple and make sure there's opportunities to make sure that they're make sure that's the worst, there isn't anything else, and to make it so that it can come out and any with the terms of reference. Yes, of course, the chair can, as a proper independent, change them, but obviously all chairs, you look at historical reviews, you look at the terms of reference and then what the chairs have done. That's usually, in terms of alterations to things, it's usually quite minimal, isn't it? Because that's taken as, they know they're working for you, obviously, they're independent, they're working for you. So this will indicate to them what you want to find out, and therefore making them as broad as possible means they'll.
Sorry, I'd just like to say,
sorry, yes.
I think they commissioned on our behalf, not working for us.
Oh, I know, yes.
So
Yes.
I think with commissioning the review.
No, they're not working.
Oh no, yeah, sorry.
Not-
No, I totally understand. My poor choice of words on my part. Sorry.
That was my fault, the way I worded it.
Poor
But,
choice of words.
What I'm saying is, it's coming out of our,
Being funded.
out of the budget, yeah.
Absolutely.
I could see some hands up. I'm conscious at the time because of for the memorial for the firefighter who lost his life in Scotland. So could we adjourn now and we'll reconvene in 20 minutes if possible, please, everybody? Okay then, so I've got some hands up and some on the screen and in the room. I'll call Sue in first, please.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. This is just to pick up on the terms of reference now. So I'm scrolling away, but I can't quite find it. But it's the talking about asking staff about their asking members of the fire service about their experiences, and I think it says in Microsoft Teams or in writing, and then there's a little bit of that confidentiality later on. But to pick up on what my colleague was making, any people who've come forward have a particular set of attributes which enable them to do that, but people who might feel more reticent, I mean, I'm just imagining someone in a Microsoft Teams meeting dibbing up their colleagues isn't going to happen.
No.
So I just wondered about, in the organisation I work for, the public sector organisation I work for in my day job, there's quite often a staff survey, for instance, which is completely anonymous, but it allows people to feel more secure in terms of coming forward with those sorts of issues. So I'm just going to suggest that it's very clear that there will be that people will be enabled to speak.
Yeah, that's clear.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we look at all communication methods and avenues for staff, current employed and ex-employees to have their voice heard throughout the whole process.
Chair, I did believe there was a suggestion that the review team themselves would have a route directly to the review team staff, so they wouldn't have to come to service. They would go directly to the people doing the review as well. I think that's a suggestion.
Yeah, thank you. Good.
Steve Evans.
I think David was before me, if you don't mind, Steve.
All right then. Okay then. All right. Okay, David.
Yeah, thank you. Personally, I don't support any form of misogynistic behaviour, racism, sexual harassment, bullying, or any of those unacceptable behaviours. But I do hope that the review body has somebody who has experience of the emergency services. I mean, say these chaps aren't making teacups. They're actually going out to what can be very horrendous situations. And in that, the black sense of humour, I challenge anybody that served on any station in any form of emergency service to deny black humour has helped them. Black humour and unacceptable behaviour are two different things, though they sometimes cross. I just want to be certain that this review body won't rip the heart out of the black humour that helps staff get through these horrendous situations, and they take the black humour situation and the bullying as two different issues. Thanks.
Thank you, David. No comment. Maureen?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Going back to what Kerry said just now about the COVID lockdown, how it wasn't supposed to be so bad then. I think one of the worst things we get in this day and age is the bullying online. And people will say things online they'd never say to somebody to their face. And that's the problem. They can't get, I mean, obviously they could get away with it by just not looking at their computers or their phones, but you can't get away from it all the time. And it is always, seems to be, people say worse things are more unkind then than they would be face to face. And I think that's a problem that is quite forward at the moment. And I hope that will be looked into, because even though people weren't meeting at work and that, they still could bully each other, which is a shame.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. Yes, I agree with that. Steve?
Thank you, Chair. Well, first of all, I agree with the recommendations and the way we're going about it, because other organisations do the same sort of system. We're trying to be open and transparent in what we're doing and what we're proposing. But what I would ask, if we weren't doing this, would we be doing no action, and then we'd be a bigger fault for doing nothing?
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Councillor Evans. I think one thing that I will ensure that it will be a inclusive review. It will include our operational staff and our corporate professional support staff, ex-employees, as well. We'll have the opportunity to speak to the review team. You're right. It does need to be inclusive, and it will be inclusive from the start, including all of our firefighters, their views, and their experiences as well. And there is a difference between humour and poor standards and behaviour as well. And I can see from the qualifications experience that the barristers that have been shortlisted will have got suitable experience to understand the difference of both. But unacceptable behaviour is unacceptable behaviour.
You can't be funny without being misogynist or racist and all the rest of it, as we well know, including black and Gallagher, etc.
Jen?
Just a disagreement, Chair, where someone mentioned that the 3-member panel should be women. We can't dictate that. It has to be gender neutral. Just my comment again. Sorry, Chair.
Okay, thanks. Kate?
Thank you, Chair. Just to recognise and value the huge amount of work and thought that has gone into this. It's nothing less than what is needed to draw out what has worked well as what obviously is important that we need to reflect on and do differently going forward. I just wanted to note, I'm struggling to find the paragraph, but there's a paragraph referring to the Future Generations Act and the Sustainable Development Principle and the 7 goals. That principle refers to the 5 ways of working. I think it's really important that we have that in there. From what I can see, this review addresses those 5 ways of working. It is seeking to involve unions and workforce representatives, and it's thinking about, drawing in collaboration from elsewhere and best practice. So I strongly recommend that is in there, so that whichever KC is appointed is clear that is how we work in Wales and at this authority. Language matters, and I think some expert eye over some of the terms of reference, just to make sure that we are being as current as possible with thinking around some of the agendas at the moment around inclusivity to make sure that this is as inclusive as it possibly can be. And given that this is a significant sum of money, it's utterly crucial that we get every pound's worth out of this review. And you know that we are looking at it through the lens to really maximise the contribution that this can make to building on the culture, improving the culture going forward. So I just a real plea for us to keep our foot to the floor around that, maximising the benefits of this, not just kind of like in a year, 2 years time, but along the way as well. I'm sure there will be opportunities for real-time learning as we go through, so it would be good to see some way of just drawing those points out. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Councillor Carr. Yeah, that'll be ingrained within the terms of reference and the way that we work without a shadow of doubt. On the cost bit, that's obviously our finance colleagues trying to attribute some monetary value to it. I don't see it as a cost. I see it as an investment, and the outcome of the report will certainly make us a better service as a result. The outcome of the report for me is merely the start of what we need to achieve in ensuring that we've got the right culture, the right behaviours and attitudes across all of our workplaces at every minute of the day.
I can't see no other hands up on the screen.
I should have brought my chair, so.
I should have brought my long distance glasses because I can hardly see the screen up there. I should. It's okay, so go to the recommendations. I will read the recommendations out, so it's all above board, so nobody can say anything. The recommendations are that members approve the draft terms and reference for the independent review attached to Appendix 1. The members approve the allocation of earmarked reserves as outlined in paragraph 334, and that nominations are received from members from the Authority Review Board, providing ongoing support to the independent chairperson throughout the review. And that members approve the creation of an independent appointment board consisting of the members outlined in part 223. Everybody's happy with that?
Yes.
Can I have a show of hands, please? Yep. Right, thank you very much. Diolch yn fawr iawn.
Do we want to take the nominations?
So can we have any nominations for 3 people to be on this panel?
I would move Pam Drake, Steve Evans, and Maureen.
It's a difference to me. Okay. Whoever wants to do it, yeah.
Well, I was just going to say that I think Sue here would have more experience than I would have for that sort of thing. So I'd yes. So I'd rather recommend Sue because she's got a lot of experience.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. Sue, Steve.
Not that I would know one to do it, but I just felt that she.
Anybody else? Anybody else names would like to come forward, please?
I'll volunteer myself if the board would have me. But obviously it's entirely up to
the way I look at it, I'd rather have more names than not enough names, because you can always have a reserve. Because that's the way I've always worked. I think you should now always have 1 or 2 reserves. So when you're interviewing in school for teachers, do a short list of 5. Only 2 will turn up on the day, so you're shocked. You know what I mean? So I've got no problem with 4 names or 5 names going, and we got a backup.
Happy to support
Jen?
as well, Chair.
Yes, happy to be considered, Chair.
Yeah, Kate, what did you say, Kate?
Happy to support as needed, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so I think if we got the 5 names, I'm quite happy with that, and we'll work with that, and we do that just in case somebody's ill or whatever. So we're above board with everything.
Just to clarify, then we've got Councillor McConnell, Councillor Wright, Councillor Morgan, Councillor Carr, and Councillor Evans.
Yep.
Yeah, happy with that.
permanent.
Well,
Yeah, no, keep it out of it, yes.
keep me out of it.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
me, keep me out
Yes,
of it
yeah.
just in case as well.
Yeah. All right, so everybody happy with that? Okay, then, should we go on to the next item on the agenda, 6.2 on page 67. Chris, we've been waiting to get this done today.
Sure, it's not that exciting. Members, this is a culmination of a series of reports to Fire Authority, FAPM and the Scrutiny Group regarding next year's budget. Just by way of a sort of summary of where we've come from on the journey, the medium-term financial plan in September indicated we would need a 10.6% increase in budget next year. Work undertaken since September has reduced this figure by around £2 million worth of reductions. But this, rather unhelpfully, some late announcements by the Welsh Government and Deputy Minister on grant income subsequently increased the requirement back up to around 12.7%. So that's the position we were at December, and the Fire Authority signed off a consultation on a 12.7% budget increase in December, which went out to all the constituent councils. We've essentially had two consultation responses. There's a formal response which is included within your agenda, which came in from the 5 leaders of the Gwent councils. But prior to that, in response to some correspondence regarding the culture review issues that we've just discussed, there was actually a comment from all 10 leaders from the local authorities expressing concern about the proposed level of increase and asking us to look again at that process. So effectively, we've treated that as a budget consultation response as well. Those responses, together with the background to the budget and the ongoing risks and challenges which the authority is facing from a financial perspective, went to the Scrutiny Group on last Monday, to consider. And obviously, in considering that, they also were aware of the ask from local authority leaders regarding the size of the proposed increase. Since Monday, and the Chair hinted at this at the beginning of the meeting, we've had a revised and higher pay offer made to uniformed staff, and the FBU have indicated they will ballot for acceptance of this offer. We've now had a chance to digest that offer, and the indication is that it will increase costs next year by about £750,000. So if that were accepted, that offer, we would be looking potentially towards a budget uplift of 13.6%. rather than the 12.7%, which is included within this report before you today. In light of the sort of risks and challenges that we're facing the authority, the Scrutiny Group didn't sort of recommend to Fire Authority that they look to reduce the budget and make further savings. And I think the information that's before us today in terms of the pay award and the likely pay costs that are coming from that sort of indicates that decision. I am recommending to the authority we actually stick with the proposed budget in the report. It's very late in the budget process, and adding a further £750,000 to the budget now would obviously pass that £750,000 back to the 10 constituent authorities, and they are very late in their budget processes as well. So the suggestion is we stick with the 12.7% and we look to manage that additional £750,000 budget pressure within the authority, within the Fire Authority for next year. It effectively represents a further £750,000 worth of savings that we're passing to constituent councils. And I'm sure they won't necessarily see it that way, but that's effectively what it represents. The report includes the proposed budgets for revenue and capital, together with my assessment of the appropriate of those estimates, particularly in relation to the reserves that we carry. Our reserve strategy has remained in place for a number of years, and I'm happy that is adequate for the purposes for which they're designed. There are, however, financial risks and uncertainties which members should remain aware of in approving these budgets, but these will be monitored through the next financial year in accordance with our usual budget monitoring processes. And I believe that hopefully we should be able to manage this situation throughout the next 12 months. To reiterate the headlines in the report, members are asked to approve a 12.7% revenue budget increase. On a like-for-like basis, this represents an 8.2% increase, taking into account the Minister's reductions in grant that were notified to us late in the process. For comparison purposes, my understanding of the draft local government settlement is that Welsh Government is providing an average of 7.9% increase in funding to councils next year. So that's a sort of a reasonable comparison, I think, in terms of those two numbers. The recommendation in the report seeks delegated authority to myself to vary the budget in the event that the ministers do not approve a transfer of pensions grant to local authorities. So part of the decision making of the Deputy Minister was to transfer £3 million worth of grant from Fire Authority to the local authorities. The figures before you today that I'm asking you to approve assume that goes ahead, but in the event that it doesn't go ahead for any reason, then I'm asking also for delegated authority to make that change myself without coming back to members with a further report. I'm going to stop speaking there. I'm aware that members may have questions or comments regarding the budget process.
Thank you, Chris, for that. You know my views. I'll come in first on this. My views on the letter from the Minister saying about swapping the grants over to the unity authorities. It does look bad on the 3 fire authorities in South in Wales that the percentage has gone up because of the way Welsh Government are working this. It's non councils are losing out on anything because it's being paid out in the revenue grant. But at the end of the day, it's late in the session to put this on us and to the authorities as well. And so I think we find all the time that we get these late letters from the government changing different things. So anybody got any hands up? Mick Dad?
Yes. Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah. Can I just ask how the 12.7% compared to last year's and the year before, say?
Chair, I think I've made comment in the previous meetings that last financial year local authority resources went up by around 10% on average from Welsh Government, and the fire service asked for a 2.29% increase in resources that year. I haven't got the numbers to hand in respect to previous years, but if you look back at the various reports, Chair, you will find a history of the decisions made by the Fire Authority, and generally they've been less than the resources that have been provided to councils for that year. So we're trying to be very mindful of the resources of local councils when we make our decisions.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a bit high myself because, you know, my authority is sort of proposing, although that's not finalised yet, a 9.5% increase in the council tax. As I said, that might change in a couple of weeks' time, but if it's going to change, it's going to change downwards, I think, rather than upwards. So, you know, I mean, this 12.7% struck me as being really sort of high, because that is going to be then added on to the council tax, you know, that and the police and all that. I just feel that is a high proposal, really.
In response to that, Chair, I'll reiterate it again that around 4.5% of that increase is directly as a result of the changes that Welsh Government have made in respect of our grant.
Yeah.
So we, on a like-for-like basis, it is around 8.2. Councillor Alnwalby, just to sort of clarify that point, what we're expecting is that when the final local government settlement comes out, the South Wales authorities will get an extra £3 million worth of grant in their settlement to effectively pay some of this increase. So it's not as if that money's disappeared. It is actually being passed across to the councils, and they will see an increase from the draft figures that they've seen to date.
Okay, I take that, Chair.
Okay.
I mean, I note it. Thank you.
Yeah. Steve?
Yeah, can I just say, I'd like to thank Chris for the work he's gone into this, because this percentage has altered at numerous times. We've made initial savings, then we were asked to look at it again, then Welsh Government have come in again with asking them for the local council to pay the pensions. So fair dues to Chris, it's been a bit of a minefield with all the uncertainties. And I think, you know, he's done a valiant job by getting us to where we are. So that's just I just want to realise how much work goes into making these reports and trying to get these financial aspects right, because continual changes, percentages with, Welsh Government and with, with the population index. So, Chris, I applaud you because it's been really difficult.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Chair. I mean, no different from local government, really, in terms of all the complexities and the changes and all that.
Dan?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I want to say thank you to Chris and his team. I think it's getting increasingly difficult to do these budgets because obviously UK and Welsh Government keep pushing for timescales. I remember when I first came in as authority, we used to set our budget, I think, in December. But obviously that is impossible now. Again, I do appreciate why the budget has gone up to where it needs to go up, and I don't think there's anything we can do because of the uncertainty around staff pay at the moment on that. But I think we need to make sure we're very good at communicating the average increase over the last 10 years and how much our authority increase from local authorities have been, and compare actually how much it has gone up to their funding generally, which compares well. And I think our service, when you look at the details, we have kept our prices cost effective while still providing a great service. But I think because our Rise has, again, obviously because Welsh Government grants and we're moving the Link grant, which hasn't happened overnight in England, which is something I think obviously Welsh Government should have really looked again at. I think we need to make sure we're very good at communicating why this has happened to our local authorities and the public generally.
Thank you, Dan. Yeah, I made my case to the Minister when we met a fortnight ago about this changing over. And I still stick by the principle, and I know it'll do us all out of a job if I keep on saying this, but I really think we should go to precept like the police. I don't think we should be beholden on the local 10 constituent authorities to funding the fire service, because the general public out there think the fire service is free because they don't see anything on any council tax bill. They see council tax, they see the police, they don't see anything for fire. People don't realise the fire is in with the council. So I believe we should have our own precept set and a board of set up to run the fire authority. We can raise our own monies then, and I think it'd be much better way. But I would like to say some councils have concerns about the precept and whatever, the money they're going to pay. But we've done road shows and we've gone around local authorities and we've spoken to members, and it was great to have members participation in these meetings saying about it. But I'm disappointed that some leaders of councils didn't even turn up to those meetings to listen to what we had to say. I'll just leave it at that. Sorry. Sue, do you want to come in?
Only to pick up on what you were saying. I attended one of your roadshow events, and it was very helpful. Talk through all the issues. Picking up what you're saying, I think it's very difficult as a county councillor. I think it's painful in the financial challenges that we have. It's quite painful to be in this negotiation and competition for something which neither of us has enough of, and I just think it's a very painful process. So it's just a comment, really. I think there's pain on both sides. There is certainly a great deal of pain in my county council, hence the challenge to you.
I got to say, 2 or 3 leaders have met with us, and one in particular, one leader, I won't mention the other, on a meeting with myself, the chair, the treasurer and the chief. My own home authority, the leader met with us on a Teams meeting to discuss it, and I think that was a really good way forward for these leaders of these councils, so we could sit down and explain, and they got a better picture. But I wish some other leaders would have reached out a bit more. Can I ask a question, Chris? I know I don't like comparing other authorities to us or whatever. Have you got any idea what the mid and West and North Waleses, or can't you say?
My understanding is well, first let me say there's a caveat to this, because we don't know what the response of those two authorities is going to be in relation to the pay offer that's just been made. My gut feel is that those authorities will not be going back with a revised set of figures to approve a higher budget, the same as I recommended today. My understanding is that North Wales will be below us in terms of a number. There's been significant pressure from the local authorities in North around their increase. However, traditionally their increase has been higher than South Wales, so there's perhaps a bit of history there in relation to the size of the increase. In Mid and West, we're talking similar numbers, so not without wishing to go into the detail of that. The sorts of increases that we're talking about are of a similar order, but again, the history is that generally increases in South Wales have been lower than their numbers over a long period of time. In relation to the service issue you just raised, Councillor McConnell, so there's a bit of tension there, because I think a lot of the councils do regard the fire service as being almost like a precepting authority, that in the sense that we come and just drop a figure on the table. I hope the kind of history of the budget reports demonstrates that we are aware of their sort of pressures, and we do try and sort of look at the local government settlement when setting budgets in terms of how much resources available. But at the same time, I like to stress that fire service is something that is funded by local taxation, Welsh Government grant and local taxation. I think there's this perception that somehow fire services should be constrained to whatever Welsh Governments say councils have been given for fire services. That's not the way it works. Local taxation and council tax play a part in funding fire services in the same way they do education and social services. Of course, it's difficult for councils because they control those aspects but don't control what goes on in the fire service. So I appreciate the challenge in that discussion.
Yes, it's, nobody wants to pay extra for anything, but at the end of the day, I remember, because I've been on the fire authority now for a long time, when we did the fire cover review, Chief, and we had to close stations, and the people who were complaining the most about closing the fire stations was Senedd members. My own authority, the person is not there now, but as a Senedd member, as a new Senedd member, but that Senedd member played, part that a station was closing in that constituency, and another one as well. So I think it's a balance really. I don't want to go for another review for closing any stations or whatever, because I think that's the last resort. But if push comes to shove and money is tight and they are looking at that, tell us where we got to cut the money from in the areas for different stations and stuff like that. I'm being blunt about it, but I pull my hair out. We can't save any more money on this, and I think people got respect for this for the fire service more than anything else. I'd like to have a magic wand to say we got X, Y, and Z, do this for them all, but we just haven't. Anybody else, Maureen? Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I mean, I feel great sympathy with the fact that it is difficult, but I think the trouble is the general public, as you say, they have no idea what funds the fire authority. And I mean, they'd be the first people to jump up and down, as you said, if you had to close things. And I don't think we would want that either. And I think that, I might be similar to some of the rest of our authority, but I do feel that we have got to keep the fire authority going. What will we do without them? We can almost manage better without the police than we can manage without the fire authority. Because, it's a difficult one, obviously, because everybody's belts have got tighter and having to be tighter at the moment, and it's just trying to support the fire authority without bankrupting ourselves, isn't it? Something like that.
Yes.
I mean, I'm behind the fire authority 100%, because, as I said, when you're needed, we desperately need you. We hope that we don't ever have to need you, but that's the point.
So any other questions from anybody on the budget? So the recommendations are that the Fire Authority approve the proposed revenue and capital budgets included within the report, and the Fire Authority gives delegate authority to the Treasurer to make the appropriate adjustment to the revenue grant budget if the SCAPE grant is not transferred to the local government settlement. Everybody in agreement with that?
Yes, I'll second that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
On to page will be 5 on 87. Deputy Chair, can you take over for 2 minutes?
Yes.
I've got to leave the room a minute. Be back now. Okay, thank you.
Which we are, which one we are?
87.
Strategic
Sorry.
performance
67.
indicator.
87. I've got to turn over, sorry everybody. Right, this is the strategic performance indicators target setting, and this report is for a decision, and I believe this is going to be taken by the Assistant Chief Fire Officer of Service Delivery.
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Chair. Morning, Deputy Chair. Morning, members. Members will be aware that on a 6-monthly basis, I update full Fire Authority with the performance on our 7 strategic indicators that we report to the Welsh Government. I do that after a full 6 months of data and also after a full 12 months of data, which will be at our new Fire Authority meeting after March. This paper is in regard to a target setting that happens now at this time of year. We've based our targets for those 7 indicators on 9 months of performance data. So this paper was written with data to the end of December and actually taking into account all the incident data for there. And as I said, I will be bringing a report on the full performance of the service against those indicators in the new year. Just for a reminder, the 7 indicators, 4 are incident-based, 2 relate to injuries and fatalities, and 1 is in relation to effective response of our services. The targets that I've set, all the details are on accompanying background paper, and the targets that have been determined using the current data, the 9 month worth of data, trend analysis by the services statistics and risk team, and overlaying potential changes from public behaviour, changes to demands and working practices of our wider partners, ambulance service, police and others, to try and predict what those targets are for next year. Within the paper is requesting that you approve those targets that I've indicated, approve delegation to myself for adjustments following the review of the full 12 months of data, which will be at the end of March, and then authorise their publication. As mentioned earlier in the meeting, I think it was by the Chief and the Chair, just to put perspective on some of the data, unfortunately on the 22nd of January of this year, we had 2 fire fatalities that are not included in this set of data. The 1 fatality occurred in the Merthyr area and the 1 fatality occurred in the Bridgend area. For the Merthyr area, the crews rescued a female elderly lady from the ground floor of her home, but sadly paramedics at the scene determined there were no signs of life. And in the Bridgend incident, it was actually a late fire call, so we were called after the fire had extinguished itself by the police, and there was no action at that particular call. However, what I can confirm to the Fire Authority is that in all cases of serious accidents, injuries and fire deaths, the fire service work with all their key partners to try and understand lifestyle, how that person was living, trying to understand what support, if any, they were having from other agencies, to actually learn from it so we can actually prevent similar occurrences of injuries or deaths. So in those 2 incidents, that's what we are doing. Where my further details, where appropriate, I'll report back to Fire Authority. So in relation to the paper, the indicators and targets are contained within the accompanying background paper, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Yeah, anybody want to ask any question? Oh, Dan, you've got your hand up?
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Chair. It's a really good report. I appreciate obviously targets aren't 100% achievable, and particularly when it comes to grass fires, because there's obviously based a lot around the climate and weather, and that can change each year. But seeing that obviously the general trend has been over the last couple of decades and will, probably continue for the rest of our lifetimes, of summers getting hotter. Generally, I'm just concerned, obviously, extra support and work we need to do across all 10 local authorities around, obviously, preventing grass fires as much as we can, because we are likely to get more hot summers. I think they're up to about a quarter of total total fires, and it went up by 44%, which was, very high. So that's my main concern.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Norton. So, no, these targets are not just used to inform the public, Welsh Government and yourselves. We use these targets to disseminate them to each local authority commander, and in turn they are then spread to each station. So each station has local targets to actually target their preventative work as well and their educational work. So in relation to grass fires, we've got some ongoing projects in certain areas called the Healthy Hillsides Project, and we're hoping that will have success in the long term and potentially rolled out further, not just to the 7 trial areas they're running now, but to wider areas of the community. So where we can, we look to do work to reduce the incidence of fire, but we also appreciate some of it is due to climate change, longer period where we have grass fires now. So yeah, it's a ever-changing picture.
Are you happy with Councillor Norton?
Yeah, like I said, obviously, as members, can we obviously get updated when you get obviously the information of those 7 trial areas? Because I think it'd be, I know obviously Cardiff's a very urban authority, and we never really used to have a big issue with grass fires, but because obviously with the heat now, that is becoming more of an issue for even authorities like Cardiff. I think obviously that's something we need to focus more as an authority going forward, likely, because obviously climate change, we are going to have more forest fires and potentially more obviously wood fires as well.
Anybody else wish to raise anything? I can't see anything. Right, the recommendations are that the members note the performance indicator targets proposed for 2023-2024, that members approve delegation to the Assistant Chief Fire Officer to remove Q4 2022 to 2023 data, planned reduction strategy and refine targets as necessary, and that members approve its publication onto the South Wales Fire and Rescue internet site. Everybody agreed with that?
Yeah. Move. Sorry, can I just, for accuracy, be Deputy Chief Fire Officer, non-Assistant Chief.
Okay.
So our bad terminology in the paper, just for accuracy.
I was just reading it here.
Just in case Debbie tries to wriggle out to the workers coming his way.
All members happy with that?
Yeah.
Right, I'll hand it back down to the chair.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, so we go on to on page 105, 64. Let's see who's doing that one. Sarah, yes, here we are, yep.
Morning, Chair. Morning, members. We are still just in the morning. So this paper looks at the consultation responses for our strategic themes and objectives for the year 23-24. It was approved by the Fire Authority for us to go out to consultation in July 22, and we launched consultation in October 22. In the paper, you can see in paragraph 1.4 some of the specific groups that we engaged with, and the fact that we sent invitations widely to partner agencies. And one part of our strategy was also to share widely on our social media platforms. Now, we had 277 responses to this consultation and achieved substantial agreement with our proposed objectives for 23-24. Appendix 1, starting on page 109 of this pack, shows the results of that consultation. And pages 110 to 113 take you through the what and the how of the objectives and how they're aligned to our strategic themes. Moving on to page 115, it takes us through the consultation survey response evaluation. So and there's some good news and there's some mixed news here. So we had 25% more respondents than the previous year, which is a nice improvement. And 227 of the 277 responded to more than one objective. And that was compared to 157 the previous year. We've had a 45% increase in respondents responding to one or more objectives, and 66% of those respondents were associated with the service in one form or another. What we have seen is increased participation by corporate and control firefighters, corporate staff and control firefighters, but it does show that we need to gain more buy-in to the engagement process with our operational firefighters on all of our duty systems. And we've also had a 26% increase in responses from the public. Now, the response rate reduced as the survey progressed, and we've had significant feedback on the structure and content of the survey, particularly about how user-friendly it is or isn't, and the fact that there was a lack of specific measures for the outcomes. Now, this feedback will be considered in our evaluation and will inform future consultation exercises that we go through. Also on page 115, you can see the level of agreement to the proposed objectives for 23-24. And the overall agreement is that 81% of responses indicated agreement with our proposed objectives. And this is 8% higher than last year. The proportion of responses in agreement with each strategic theme and the supporting objectives increased for 7 out of the 8 areas. The one area where it did reduce was protecting our environment, and that was a 1% reduction from 82 to 81%. The highest proportion of agreement was recorded for keeping you safe at 86% and responding to your emergency at 85%. And these were also the greatest positive increases in the agreement. The valuable comments contained within the consultation responses will be reviewed across the service, and we'll be using those to inform our business planning process for the coming year. Moving on to page 117, the level of agreement for the themes can be seen, and clearly we've got some work to do around the valuing our people strategic theme, which had the highest rates of disagreement. There will be many and varied reasons for this, but obviously an area of work that we need to look at in the coming years. Happy to respond to any questions from members.
Steve?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Well, first of all, I'd like to say it's nice to see that the responses have gone higher. And also, if we weren't getting it right, we would have a lot more. So that clearly shows the service must be doing something right. Even though we're looking at negativity on other parts of the service, this is clearly showing the service is good in the eyes of the public. That's what it says to me anyway.
Yeah, I agree with you, Steve. It's nice to see that the responses are going up, because I remember the day when the responses were very little. Kate?
Thank you, Chair. There was a really good discussion on this at the scrutiny group last week, and I think I won't go back over all the points that were made, but there was a comment made that there were some changes coming into this, that there was still information being fed in from the consultation, and there's a couple of points around ensuring, particularly under valuing our people, that given the significant work that's going to be taking place, that reference to the review was made under the objectives, the culture review. So I just wondered have those things gone in? Because I just couldn't see from looking at today's papers where those had been reflected, or what the outcome of that conversation had been.
So, Councillor Carr, the outcome of that conversation will be the fact that the review will be referenced in the update to the strategic plan. It'll be our year 4 update to the strategic plan that comes out on the 31st of March, and that will be integrated into next year's business planning as well. So that's where those reflections will come out. It turned out that the final analysis of the consultation responses didn't create any movement. So we were just being particularly cautious in the report that we gave to the scrutiny group last week. In response to the scrutiny group request, we will be taking a paper to the scrutiny group around next year's plan for the consultation and engagement to for the scrutiny group to apply some scrutiny to that, so that we can gather the views and opinions of the members as well as we frame up our consultation for next year.
Yeah. Good. Thank you for that, Sarah. Anybody else happy with that, Kate? Yeah. I guess you nodded. Yes.
Thank
Yeah.
you, Chair.
Yeah. Yeah. Anybody else? No. Okay. Well, thank you so much. So the recommendations are that members review consultation evaluation in Appendix 1, and the members approve the strategic themes and objectives detailed in Appendix 1, collectively considered as improvement objectives. Everybody happy with that?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you ever so much. So we go on to 125. This is reports for information on the Wales audit. Have we got, I can see the gentleman there. I can see him there. Yes, here he is. Are we okay?
Yep, thank you, Chair.
Yep, okay, yeah.
Board of help.
Yeah.
So the first item on the agenda is the second of the Auditor General's certificates in relation to the local government measure. And this is just to confirm the outcome of the audit into the requirement for the authority to publish an assessment of its performance for the year 2021-22. It's quite a short certificate, so unless there are any questions from members, I'll move on to the second report.
I can't see any hands up, Charles. You'll carry on, yes, yeah.
Okay, perfect, thanks. And the second document, which is on page 129 of your packs, is the annual audit summary for the last calendar year, 2022. That sets out some of the key facts about the authority from both our financial and performance audits that we've completed in the year. So there's some background information for members on the first page, and on the second page it headlines the conclusions that the Auditor General made during the year, and that's continued on to the third page as well, such as giving an unqualified, true and fair opinion on the financial statements, and that the quality of the initial draft statements were good as well. And then on the following couple of pages, it summarises the reports that the performance audit team has carried out. The one specifically on the authority relates to carbon emissions reduction, and it has a link and the conclusion in the audit summary as well. And then just for members' background in reading as well, there are local government studies listed that have been published during the year as well. And then on the final page, just confirms that there will be some work on false alarm reduction forthcoming over the next couple of months. That was it from me. So if anyone had any questions, I'm happy to take those now.
No, thank you, Charles. I look forward for all the false alarms. Sorry, I give you a hard time when we had that meeting with false alarms. It was a good constructive meeting. It was, you know.
Definitely.
So, no, yeah. Anybody got any questions? No, I think it's a really good report for the Fire Authority, and thank you so much, Charles, for the report, and look forward to carry on working with you for many years to come.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay.
Not going to be put in detention, are we?
No, we're not. No. Well, thank you very so much. Diolch. Okay, bye. All the recommendations. There's a note in. Yes. Sorry. So we go on to the next item on the agenda, which is the work programme.
Chair, before I cover off the forward work, but we're going to come back to the item we discussed at the start, which was for ACFO Gary Davis to give an update on the deployment of.
Oh, yes, sorry. I'm sorry, yes, Gary, yeah.
Afternoon all. Yeah, so just give an update from the recent tragic events in Turkey and Syria. 77 firefighters in total from across 14 fire and rescue services in the UK were deployed. They flew out on the 6th of the 2nd. The team were made up of 5 members from Wales, 3 from South Wales Fire and Rescue Service. Also attending were structural engineers, medics and a canine dog. The Welsh team have successfully rescued 10 people from across the areas they were working in. The latest being 2 were rescued yesterday from a collapsed building. One of them was actually a serving police officer.
Yeah.
I've been in contact with the team regularly during this to check on their welfare and what support they require from the service. And I've been passing on from authority and from the service how grateful we are for what they're doing out there. There's been regular updates and really positive news items on Radio Wales and BBC TV, so that the work they're doing out there is really good. The team will fly back tomorrow. They due to land in Stansted, where they'll undergo rigorous medical checks, etc., over the next 24 hours. And they'll be collected from there on Wednesday, where we'll kick into gear out for OCAL support for them as well, because some of these teams have been to lots of disaster zones. And from their words on news items, and to me personally, this is the worst they've ever been deployed in. So it's been absolutely horrific. So I just thought it'd be right to update you and thank you for your support with these teams as well. It's very much appreciated.
Thank you, Gary. And yeah, my heart goes out to everybody up in Turkey and Syria, and to our staff that have gone out there, because it must be horrific to see the devastation. I was watching the news last night, and they were in the street, and this building just collapsed. But no, it was just it's phenomenal. It is phenomenal. I know it's not as bad as, but I remember being in Greece one year and we had an earthquake, and that frightened me to death, because when you say that the ground moves, the ground does actually move under you, and it's the most frightening thing you can ever think of. And that was a sort of small scale, so I dread to think what it was like for those poor people. But no, can you pass my thoughts? The authorities thought, thanks to all staff involved, and when things really settle down, perhaps they could be invited one day to a meeting, so they can, if they want to talk to us about something, by all means they can, and I thank you from us to them.
This must have been terrifying for them, especially with the aftershocks as well, because you could think, oh, what's going to happen? Because they can go on for a number of weeks, can't they, the aftershocks?
Yeah.
It was, as a new member of the authority and everything, and obviously this awful tragedy, and then seeing, members of this particular, Wales only, and then the 3 from here as well, and then so heartening, seeing them, actually seeing them on the television, on the news, describing what they've seen, and it was just, as a brand new member of the authority, rather than the member of public, you're always grateful for the amazing heroism and the brilliant work done, but then the extra touch, then I felt in my heart as a member of this authority. So we need to thank them very much for their service, and we hope that they are they're supported and that they are okay after experiencing that, what is absolutely unbelievably horrendous.
It's humbling to see that we can make a small successful contribution to some people's lives at the extreme end of tragedy, really. And to hear Emma speaking on it was BBC News on Friday evening, it's just so sobering, isn't it? What they have gone through. But thanks to the ongoing support that you as Fire Authority members provide, then we're able then to be able to lean in at times like this as Foreign and Commonwealth Office deployment. And it was a very quick deployment. Things are normally, so what I describe as hurry up and wait. They can spend days at airports or bases ready for deployment, but they were on the tarmac and ready to go really quick on this one. So thank you for the ongoing support.
That's the conversation we had, didn't we, Hugh? Because I said when they go in, and you said they're there, and there could be, and the next thing, and I said, well, that's the quickest I've known of a deployment from this country going out, you know. And yes, I saw on the television, I saw it on Facebook, and I shared that video on Facebook, and the private messages I had from people who I'm friends with Facebook who don't ever comment. I was shocked. Oh, good grief for life. They sent me a private message, you know, pass your thanks on. I was really touched. Yeah, excellent.
I hope they'll have the confidence to come out and speak what they've seen, rather than keep it all in like they used to years ago.
Make sure their mental health is supported.
Yeah, I can guarantee that will happen for Rock Health. You know, we will cover all that. And,
yep. Yeah. So, forward work programme.
Chair. Hard to believe that we've covered off most of the forward work programme for the municipal year, and we've only got one meeting left, so the meeting in March. Just to raise awareness from members, I've been in discussion with the chair and the chief. We're potentially looking at putting on a development day in March for members. So when the invites go out for this meeting, we may be looking to hold the Fire Authority meeting in March at the training centre in Cardiff Gate. So
the size of the agenda.
so we're looking to try and get a bit of awareness, bit of a development session put on for members to see you know, some of the facilities and some of the services that we provide. So I'll keep you updated on that as we go through it. But apart from that, the plan is as forward plan as set out there. Unless members have got any additions or changes they'd like to make.
No, I think it'd be great for the new members to go to Cardiff Gate and see the facilities down there, because I believe Cardiff Gate is a fantastic facility.
Jen's got a hand up.
Jen?
She's on mute.
You're on mute, Jen?
Sorry. Is that the date for the meeting the same day as the presentation? Or is it a different date? I have a problem, Chair, through health problems. I'm not allowed to drive on motorways. I can drive on A and B roads, but I'm not allowed on motorways.
Right.
So if it's the same day as the presentation, I've arranged with the commander of Ebbw Vale because he's attending and he's going to give me a lift.
Right, that's okay then. It's a different meet, yeah. We'll sort something out, Jen, okay?
Thank you very much, Chair.
Okay. Kate?
I just wondered, Chair, I'd reserved the previous day, but with the change in date to the afternoon, I've got a clash, which I'm trying to get out of. If that's not possible, will there be an alternative offer for members who aren't able to make the training?
Yeah, obviously we'll capture what is delivered and if needs be, we will do a mop-up session to get members to visit the ones that aren't able to attend that day.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks for that, Geraint. Item 8, consider urgent items, Chairperson, I haven't. So 8.1 part 2.
Part 2.
Yeah, exclusion of the press and public. Information included in the following items should not for publication by the virtue of paragraphs 12, 13 of part 4, schedule 12A, Local Government Act 1972. Can I have